Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class from Canto 2, which is entitled The Cosmic Manifestation. Chapter 9 answers by citing the Lord's version. And this morning we're doing text 43. Without further ado, we'll start the class. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari 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 Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajikacharya Stottara Satasya Maharaj Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shilopad Ki Jai Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajikacharya Stottara Satasya Maharaj Divine Grace Shila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय इस्कॉन फाउंडर श्री प्रभुपाद की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवाचार्य गौर भक्त वृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोकुल श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय मथुरा धाम की जय नवद्वीप धाम की जय जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय सीमापुर धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय जमुना माई की जय तुलसी देवी की जय भक्ति देवी की जय हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari 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 Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to the Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Dinabhide Namaste Krishna Padaya Prabhupada Siddharthani Sri Gaura Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Dinabhide Narayana Namaskritya Narun Chevam Narutamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayam Gadirayat Nashta Prayesva Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamasloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki No Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation, Chapter 9, answers by citing the Lord's Version. Text 43. tuṣṭaṁ niśāmya pitaraṁ lokānāṁ prapitāmaham devarṣiḥ paripapraccha bhavān mānupṛcchati tuṣṭaṁ niśāmya pitaraṁ lokānāṁ prapitāmaham devarṣiḥ paripapraccha bhavān mānupṛcchati tuṣṭaṁ niśāmya pitaraṁ lokānāṁ prapitāmaham devarṣiḥ paripapraccha bhavān mānupṛcchati. Hare Krishna. Please stand.
तुष्टं निशाम्य पितरं लोकानां प्रपितामहं देवर्षिः परिप्रपच्छ भवान् यन् मनुप्रच्छति. हरे कृष्ण.
Hare Krishna. Maybe one more.
तुष्टं निशाम्य पितरं लोकानां प्रपितामहं देवर्षिः परिप्रपच्छ bhavān mānupṛcchati. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else? Okay, word for word. tuṣṭaṁ, satisfied. Niśāmya, after seeing. Pitaraṁ, the father. Lokānāṁ, of the whole universe. Prapitāmaham, the great grandfather. Devarṣiḥ, the great sage Nārada. Prapipapraccha, inquired. Bhavān, yourself. Yat, as it is. Ma, from me. Mānupṛcchati, inquiring. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The great sage Nārada also inquired in detail from his father Brahmā, the great-grandfather of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied. Report by Srila Prabhupada. The process of understanding spiritual or transcendental knowledge from the realized person is not exactly like asking an ordinary person from asking an ordinary question from a schoolmaster. The schoolmasters in the modern days are paid agents for giving some information, but the spiritual master is not a paid agent, nor can he impart instruction without being authorized. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 34, the process of understanding transcendental knowledge is directed as follows. Tad vidhi paripatena paripashnena sevaya upadikshyanti te jnanam jnanina taspadashina. Arjuna was advised to receive transcendental knowledge from the realized person by surrender, questions, and service. Receiving transcendental knowledge is not like exchanging dollars. Such knowledge has to be received by service with the spiritual master. As Brahmāji received the knowledge directly from the Lord by satisfying him fully, similarly, one has to receive the transcendental knowledge from the spiritual master by satisfying him. The spiritual master's satisfaction is the means of assimilating transcendental knowledge. One cannot understand transcendental knowledge simply by becoming a grammarian. The Vedas declare, Yasya deva para bhaktir tata devi tata gurau. Tashyate katita hyarta prakashanti mahatmanaha. Only unto one who has unflinching devotion to the Lord and to the spiritual master Thus, transcendental knowledge become automatically revealed. Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.23. Such relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master is eternal. One who is now the disciple is the next spiritual master. And one cannot be a bona fide and authorized spiritual master unless one has been strictly obedient to his spiritual master. Brahmāji, as a disciple of the Supreme Lord, received the real knowledge and imparted it to his dear disciple Nārada. And similarly, Nārada, as spiritual master, handed over this knowledge to Vyasa and so on. Therefore, the so-called formal spiritual master and disciple are not facsimiles of Brahma and Nārada or Nārada and Vyasa. The relationship between Brahma and Nārada is reality, while the so-called formality is the relationship between the cheater and the cheated. It is clearly mentioned herewith that Nārada is not only well-behaved, meek, and obedient, but also self-controlled. One who is not self-controlled, specifically in sex life, can become neither a disciple nor a spiritual master. One must have disciplinary training in controlling the speaking, anger, the tongue, the mind, the belly, and the genitals. One who has controlled the particular senses mentioned above is called a Goswami. Without becoming a Goswami, one can become neither a disciple nor a spiritual master. The so-called spiritual master without sense control is certainly the cheater, and the disciple of such a so-called spiritual master is the cheated. One should not think of Brahmāji as a dead great-grandfather, as we have experienced on this planet. He is the oldest great-grandfather, and he is still living, and Nārada is also living. The age of the inhabitants of the Brahmaloka planet is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. The inhabitants of this small planet Earth can hardly calculate even the duration of one day of Brahma. Oma Gyanat Mirandasya Gyana Gyana Shalakaya Chakshu Umilitam Jena Chasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadama Indadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirveshesha Sunyavadi Pasyatya Deshatayane Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namni Guratu Jai Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Shari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. The English translation again. The great sage Nārada also inquired in detail from his father Brahma, the great-grandfather of all the universe. After seeing him well satisfied. So this is the interaction between father and son. Father is also called the great-grandfather, the first of all the material universe, Lord Brahma. His son Nārada is inquiring from him. In fact, he's asked quite a few questions, but the one just before this particular text, where Nārada was inquiring about the energies of Lord Vishnu, especially the one that he uses to create. Lord Brahma is regarded as a second creator because the first part of the creation comes from Mahavishnu, Karanodakshaya Vishnu. The universes come out of his pores. And each universe then has a Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, who is an expansion of Mahavishnu. From the navel, the lotus of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, the navel of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, the lotus grows. And this lotus flower, the stem of it has the 14 planetary systems. The top of it, where the petals are, is where Lord Brahma is born. So Brahma is the first living entity, apart from, of course, the spiritual personality of Godhead himself, Prabhudaksha Vishnu. So he's the first one with a material body, and Chandramali Swami has explained actually Lord Brahma's body is subtle, more subtle than the physical bodies that we have here, merely intelligence. But he has so many capabilities that we can't even dream of. That's why he's the main creator, but the second creator, because Mahavishnu is the one through whom the universes come to be. So that's the understanding about that. That's at least a small way of explaining this, summarized way of explaining this. Now, so for this text, in the purport, first, Srila Prabhupada describes the way in which spiritual knowledge is disseminated, going from one person, one realized person to another, in order to make that other person also a self-realized soul. So it's not like asking ordinary questions from schoolmaster. That's the first thing that Srila Prabhupada talked about. What do you do in that situation? Well, especially in the higher institutions of learning, in order to get from the schoolmaster, you just pay tuition. When the teacher just teaches you. The whole thing is arranged like that. But the spiritual master does not get paid. Anyone that preaches bhavān for 7 days and people give him money is not really a bona fide spiritual master. It's not a bona fide teacher. They're out to make money. Those people were advised not to go here, not to listen to. We won't get realization, we will get little to no realization from such a person. Because Krishna is not cheap. The Lord is in the heart. And therefore, if somebody's motivation to preach Srimad Bhagavatam is money, then those who go to listen to that person are the ones who have agreed to be cheated by this person who wants money and is a cheater. Srimad Bhagavatam is not for making money. The bona fide spiritual master does not require any, but it is also said that the process of inquiring from a spiritual master, as is explained in chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, that's entitled Transcendental Knowledge, text 34, tad vidi pranipatena paripashnena sevaya. That's the first thing. We have to get transcendental knowledge received by surrendering. One of the physical ways to show surrender is to offer obeisances at the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Then you ask questions, not in a challenging way, but in a humble way. There will be doubts sometimes because we really don't know much about the transcendence by the spiritual world. So there will be some things that will be over our heads in terms of imagining. We'll try to imagine. That's natural for people that don't know a particular thing. They'll try to imagine. That's why Srila Prabhupada uses that the analogy, frog philosophy. So Mr. Frog was living in a well. He had children, little frogs, who leaped out of the well on one day and moving around, hopping around, they saw the ocean. He realized it was water, just like there's water in the well. So they returned to their father and says, "My dear father, we have seen a larger body of water, very large body of water." The father said, "How large? Is it like twice this well? Is it like 10 times as well?" He couldn't. He couldn't figure out, so he started imagining. And that's very natural for us to imagine. Fortunately, this particular path with its knowledge makes some things very obvious to us because it is part of our lives. It's part of our life space, so we can understand, or it makes sense to us. As my one of our spiritual master is called Pariksit. He said, and he had a background in physics, British-bodied guy. And he was a sannyasi. This was in the 90s. He came to Gitanagri. There was a workshop, and he was one of the presenters. And he talked about when he came to Krishna consciousness, why he stayed. And he said the one thing that made a greatest impact to him is that everything that was being talked about made sense to him. He's a scientist. He's in physics. It made sense. And this is why this is called spiritual science. Transcendental knowledge is spiritual science. And spiritual science makes sense. And sometimes there's proof of it. Not every time we can get proof because we are limited with this physical body and the kind of mind that's in here. But the proof is exciting. You look around and you see that there's nature. And you see that there's living things in nature, living entities in nature. And I'm one of the living entities in a human body. But there are other living entities in non-human body. Why? No religionist can explain that to you. Why? And you also realize that we have more intelligence than them. So how come they don't have the same level of intelligence as we do? You will not get that kind of answer, a satisfying answer to that from a religionist. That's why Krishna says, abandon all these varieties of religion. They're not going to teach you much. So Jesus also said in John chapter 16, verse 12, I have much to tell you, but you're not ready to receive it yet. Jesus knew. Those associated with Brahmā loka, they know. But in coming to this arena, people were so much into sense gratification and were not really open to live a life of renunciation, because it's through renunciation. Now that's woven into the do's and don'ts in this particular society. But it's actually tapasya. No meat eating, no fish, no eggs, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. So a lot of things that people use for sense gratification, we are advised to stay away from it. This particular lifestyle means to stay away from those. So around us, people are doing it and we're staying away from it. So that's the tapasya part. We are renounced. But Jesus said simply live in this world, but not be of this world. But they don't know how. As Srila Prabhupada will also say in another thing, the American dollar has on there, in God we trust, but they don't know God. So all of these things happen, but we can identify God easily. You've seen pictures of him so many times, in so many places in our temples, and even in our homes. So yeah, we sometimes take some things for granted, but actually it is very high spiritual science that many of these other people don't know about. So we approach the spiritual master, come back to the purport. Srila Prabhupada says, Brahmaji received the knowledge directly from the Lord by satisfying him. That's why we have to satisfy the spiritual master by serving him and by respecting him with the questions. Ask the questions humbly, out of respect. You don't understand something, and questions are very important. When a person asks a question, they are much less likely to challenge the authority, the person that they're asking the questions of, that they're relating to. When some things are doubtful in our minds, this is very important practice for us. Put it in a question form. You see, there's also the other part of it, which is to challenge the person. Or to comment about something that's negative, which is called criticism. But rather than do that, we just ask a question. And then the same thing that you think is wrong, you put it in the question form, you get the answer, and then you realize what the situation is from the answer that you get. So that's how we have to approach the spiritual master. And the spiritual master is not asking to be paid, but we serve because he's a representative of Krishna, and Krishna is to be served. So we practice how to serve Krishna by serving the spiritual master. That's why the service part is also there. So now there's also the devotion part of it that is very important. The Srila Prabhupada quoted from Swata Upanishad. The translation says, only unto one who has unflinching devotion to the Lord and to the spiritual master does transcendental knowledge become automatically revealed. Automatic revelation means what is told to us, we can accept, and it goes right to our hearts. It is very convincing. But we have to have unflinching devotion to the Lord. We have to be very, very steady and determined to serve the Lord and the Lord's devotees. That's unflinching devotion. And when you say devotees, that means the spiritual master and senior devotees and all other devotees as to the levels. The levels are there. We have so senior to us, those at our level, and those that came later. That's for another time. We can discuss those. But you have to have a good connection with everyone. Don't have any enemies. Don't. There'll be people who you disagree with, but they shouldn't be enemies. Disagreement is part of life. Even the gopis disagree sometimes. That shouldn't be anything new. They don't disrespect each other. Disagreement is different from disrespect. Disagreement is you have one point and that person has another point, and those 2 points don't gel yet. It's open to debate, but don't disrespect. Or don't bring a false ego into this and say, why is he not seeing in my way, therefore I get angry with them. This is all not helpful. It won't help us. We like that. So those who have unflinching devotion, the transcendental knowledge comes to us. You have devotion. I'm telling you, that means all of us. If you didn't have devotion, you won't be on there now wanting to listen. So it's a question of increasing our devotion. Everybody has some devotion at a certain level, but the increase is very much proportional. It goes the same line, like two-wheel tracks running parallel. Our love for Krishna and our devotion to Krishna go together. The more we're willing to serve, the more we're willing to hear and do what we've heard, apply it, the more devotion we grow into, and the happier we become. When more transcendental knowledge is revealed to the devotee becomes happier and happier because it's like a big eye-opener. You get to see a lot of things. Some of the questions which we didn't go to answering all become clear, especially when they talked about nature and why the human being has more intelligence than others and so on. It all has to do with the person's activity. Dehinosmin yata dehe komariyo varam jara tata dehantara prapti dhiras tatana muhyati. A sober person is not surprised by the fact that the soul goes from one to another, one body to another body. In fact, we're given the total types of bodies in this material universe. I mean, in the whole material world, 8,400,000. And of that, the levels of intelligence go from low to high. And the different species, even the numbers and the total numbers of them are all described. Therefore, transcendental knowledge is very scientific. 900,000 types of species in the water, 2 million types of trees, 1,100,000 types of insects and reptiles, 1 million types of birds, 3 million types of beasts and animals, little to big ones, 400,000 types of human bodies. So all of that, you can't get it in any religion anyway. It's explained here easily. So That's why Nārada was very interested in finding out from his father, who was also playing the role of the spiritual master to him. And Srila Prabhupada says, the disciple, actually, to go back a little bit, one who has unflinching devotion to the Lord and to the spiritual master is the one who gets transcendental knowledge automatically revealed to him. So the eternal relationship is there between the disciple and the spiritual master. In fact, one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples explained to us what Srila Prabhupada told them. This is wonderful. Sometimes you hear Srila Prabhupada disciples. They tell you things that didn't get written down, but Srila Prabhupada told and they remember it. Not everything that's written down, not everything that Srila Prabhupada said is written down. So this particular Mataji said that when we go back to the spiritual world, of course, we won't take these material bodies because we all know that you leave this body here. But we will be able to recognize each other in the spiritual bodies, the soul's full form. And we will see Srila Prabhupada for who he is also, because he also was using the physical body here. We recognize each other. And we'll get along with each other wonderfully. That's another point that he said, yeah. So all of these are there, and we should look forward to it, because that's where the real happiness is. Anyway, one cannot, Srila Prabhupada makes this point, one cannot be a bona fide and authorized spiritual master unless one has been strictly obedient to his spiritual master. So the other way of putting it is, if we're not obedient to our spiritual master, we won't be able to affect another person, even if we're interested in trying to make that person Krishna conscious. If we want to kind of help someone, we have to get into the mood of understanding and obeying spiritual master. When he gives instruction, we take it. When he gives, the other day we were talking about it, when he gives even an opinion, don't let Maya say, oh, it's an opinion, because I've heard it's an opinion, therefore I've got my opinion too. No, when the spiritual master gives an opinion, that's an order. If you really want to understand and obey spiritual master and grow in Krishna consciousness, opinions should be taken as orders coming from the spiritual masters. Opinions should be taken as orders. Regular orders should be there, but opinions from the spiritual master should also be put in that category. It's an order. So when a person has been strictly obedient to his spiritual master, then he can become an effective Shiksha Guru, give instruction. Because when we're doing that, anyone that's doing that, preaching, anyone, not just me only, a lot of people everybody can preach. Depends who they're talking to. But if you're obedient to the spiritual master, then when you open your mouth, things that you hadn't even thought of, they come. Krishna just uses us like just a conduit from which ideas come. Just like that. Why? Because the Paramatma is there in the heart, and he feeds the intelligence. And through the intelligence, the ideas come, and the examples come. And when we are able to affect the other person, because we ourselves are very obedient to the spiritual master. Now, let's talk about, because I know some of you are not initiated that are on here. The preeminent spiritual master for this society is Srila Prabhupada. You have to obey all spiritual masters. We have to relate well to senior devotees. We have to relate well to everybody. That's true. But when you say a spiritual master, when you say, I'm not initiated, the spiritual master for you is his divine grace, Srila Prabhupada. Obey his instruction and offer obeisances to him when you come to the temple. We do that, then Krishna becomes pleased with us, because as long as we're serving the pure devotee of our Lord, Krishna will always be on our side, on the good side. Krishna will not put us in the doghouse. And sometimes he does for devotees. When we become difficult to deal with Krishna, we just, several times we've seen over these decades that I've been in Krishna consciousness, we've seen good things happen to devotees, and we see devotees get slapped on the wrist too. Sometimes groups of devotees get slapped on the wrist, depending on when they all band together to do something that they know is not right. So Krishna is like a father to us, like a parent to us. He's guiding. Spiritual Master is also guiding. So we are fortunate because the end result is we get to go back home, back to Godhead. The solution to everything that we're hoping to get here, but we can never get in this place, not in the material world. Nārada is well behaved. He's meek and obedient. Now, when you say meek, that doesn't mean that you roll over. Anybody can step on you and do as you like. Obedience, well, that doesn't need much explanation. But meek means a person who uses words very, very, very carefully. They don't jab at people with words. They use mild words. Two things. Use of mild words, and if they don't understand something, rather than criticize, they question. They they put the question in a very nice way. One story. There was a Brahman, and this was Lord Chaitanya's time when he was here. Lord Nityananda was also here. Lord Chaitanya was sannyasi. He took sannyas later from Ishwarapuri. And he was very, very blissfully chanting the holy names of the Lord and inducing others to do the same. Lord Nityananda, everybody knew that the way in which to get people to be more interested in Krishna consciousness, some of the habits would be to have to be submissive and to also be simple. Lord Nityananda had all kinds of jewelry on him. All kinds of jewelry. So it's like this Brahman looks at him and says, but this is the person that's supposed to teach us what's right, but his way of presenting himself is like getting us to think more materially, jewels and wearing this and all of that. You know how people are like. When they want to dress up, they just have all kinds of jewelry on them. And so the Brahman didn't understand. He didn't go to Lord Nityananda. He went to Lord Chaitanya. And he asked this question in a very humble way. Lord Chaitanya understood him, that he was confused as to why we're teaching simplicity. Brahman is also a teacher. So Lord Chaitanya is teaching, and the Brahman is also teaching what he hears from Lord Chaitanya. But he looks at Lord Nityananda and says, how can I explain to people that we need to live simply, and Lord Nityananda is wearing all this jewelry? So, but he put it in a very, very simple way. He says, I don't understand. That is the main point. That's how you put your question. I put it on you, and I put it on me. I don't understand why it's this way. So it may be okay that it's this way. I just don't know why it's this way. So then I ask my question, why? So it can be explained to me. So this is how the Brahman approached it. And Lord Chaitanya, to let a long story, so it said about two different episodes, pastimes involving Lord Nityananda. But when it was finished, I'll just get straight to conclusion. The Brahman understood that Lord Nityananda is at a level not to be compared with regular human beings. This is how Lord Chaitanya, through his explanation, got the Brahman to understand, don't compare yourself to Lord Nityananda. He's in a class by himself. We're not at his level. And the Brahman understood it that way. So that was the answer he got from Lord Chaitanya, based on after Lord Chaitanya told him a few leelas involving Lord Nityananda. Srila Prabhupada talks about being very, very much in tune with controlling the senses. The senses are the ones that carry us away and keep us in the material energy. And then from that, we don't get to go back to Godhead because we're too attached to material sense gratification. So in Nectar of Instruction, the very first shloka deals with this particular matter. Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jiva vegam, udarapasta vegam, etan vegam, yo vishayati dhira, savam apinam, pritivim, sasishyat. The translation is the sober person, dhira, who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, the belly, and the genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. The sober person. The one that can tolerate the urge to speak. Sometimes we have to be patient, where sometimes we want to say some things, but it is not the right time to say it. Or our mood is such that if the words come out, you're going to come out in a very abrasive way, very insulting way. And that means we're angry then. Who can tolerate, the person who can tolerate the urge to speak. So speech should be first things that involve Krishna consciousness, or at the very least, more the goodness, at the very least. No passion stuff, no ignorant stuff. No statements involving passion and ignorance. And sometimes we have to keep quiet. Sometimes people are tempted to be dishonest. And this happens a lot in this world because it's going on and on and on and on in this Kali Yuga. But as His Holiness Guru Govinda Maharaj said to his disciples, and of course it was recorded and that's how I heard it, we have to live like we are living in Satya Yuga. Satya Yuga, honesty is topmost. So if we're in a situation where we want to say something that's not true, it's best to keep quiet or to get out of there. At the worst situation is change the subject, but don't come out with a story that is not true. Because as soon as we do that, we're in Maya. And from that, more suggestions will come to do the same. Well, this situation, you told a story and you got away with it. Here's another situation, you can tell another story. And of course, you're going to get away with it. At least you think that way. So we have to be careful. The mind's demands. The mind controls the senses. The mind wants this, the mind wants that. The mind accepts and rejects things. I like this, I don't like this. The intelligence is the one that discriminates. But what you mind are thinking of, is this going to be good for you? For me? For the soul? For my life? Yes, then do it. No, then don't do it. In fact, Srila Rupa Goswami has put it simply, accept those things that are favorable to devotion service. Reject those things that are unfavorable. Rule of thumb, we live like that. So whatever happens, would this help my bhakti? Yes, then do it. Will this help my bhakti? No, then stay away from it. That way we can control the mind's demands, And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also, Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, has also said, in the morning, beat the mind. In the evening, again, beat the mind. Why? Because in the morning, sometimes, instead of chanting Hare Krishna, even in our minds, immediately we begin to think about some material things. How to beat that is, if you are initiated, once you get up, say your pranams to your spiritual master. If you're not initiated, once you get up, say the pranam to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami. Iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani. Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatiyadi Chatarani. As soon as you think that way, then you can add Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivacharya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And immediately the mind is trapped and put into Krishna conscious mode. And not a kami mode. So the mind just accepts things and rejects things. They're actions of anger. When we get angry, temporarily we're not thinking straight. Temporarily, at the time we're angry, we say things that we would regret later on. So we have to be careful. There are times that anger is allowed. Allowed not in terms of just, anyway, it's allowed because it's not sinful to be angry. That's when another devotee gets blasphemed, or our spiritual master gets blasphemed, or Srila Prabhupada gets blasphemed, or ISKCON gets blasphemed. This particular society is a society with so much mercy built in. A Vaishnava, a follower of Lord Vishnu, is supposed to chant 64 rounds. ISKCON, the founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada has given so much mercy, allowing us to go back to Godhead with chanting a minimum of 16 rounds. There is so much mercy built into this. And then there's so much also, which is built into this, that is absolutely wonderful. Because ISKCON is a branch of Brahmā Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. There are 4 sampradayas. 3 of them take you to the spiritual world planets, where the Lord is there as Narayan, and you worship the Lord in awe and reverence. This particular one that ISKCON is connected to, the Brahmā Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, devotees from there have a chance to go back to Golok Vrindavan, the farthermost planet where there is much variety, way more variety in relating to Krishna. It is the sweetest. It's the biggest planet. It is also the sweetest. And that's where Srila Prabhupada is taking us to, with so much mercy built into this. Lord Chaitanya says, chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, surrender to me. And some people say, we don't know how to do that, or we don't want to do that. We like the material energy so much. Lord Chaitanya doesn't say anything about surrender. He says, just chant. He says, chant the holy name of the Lord. Chant blissfully and dance. And that is already the way in which we develop love of Godhead, because we're chanting Krishna's names. Interestingly enough, we throw one side thing in here. I was listening to a lecture by Govinda Maharaj, and then we'll just wrap it up. He was explaining something that was quite deep and transcendental, definitely. That's all he talks about is transcendence. He said that and so this is just information we're throwing out for all our benefit. He said that in the spiritual world, the Hare Krishna mantra is also chanted. Of course, the Hare Krishna mantra is imported from the spiritual world here, so they chant that. But he talked specifically about the gopis. The gopis chant the Hare Krishna mantra. They dance to the Hare Krishna mantra. Their music is phenomenal. But while we chant Hare Krishna, the Hare is O Hara. That's what the Hare means. O Hara, addressing Hara. And who is Hara? Srimati Radharani. But listen to what we just said earlier. The gopis chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Srimati Radharani is the head of the gopis. So she also chants Hare Krishna. And so Maharaj started playing with our minds. What do you think? Srimati Radharani would chant Hare to herself? Of course not. She's not like that. So when those in the spiritual world, when they chant Krishna's name. So they chant Hare Krishna. Now, we're not saying you should do that now. Ours are specifically Hare Krishna. We have to understand that. But the gopis chant Hare Krishna because Lord Hare is Krishna. And of course, Krishna is Krishna. So they changed that part slightly. But we are not at their level. So we just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, for Srimati Radharani as Hare. But the gopis, Maharaj was explaining, Govinda Maharaj, they changed that part. The first word is also Krishna. Hare like Hari. Like that. That's the way they chant. So when you get back to the spiritual world and you are among the gopis and you chant like that, then at that time you can. At that time you can. But right now, Hare Krishna. So much there is actually there to be, to be enjoyed later on. We should really take this process seriously. Don't go back to doing the things that we were doing wrongly and then think that, oh, when we chant, then it's going to be erased. No, it doesn't work like that. It does not. If we do things that are wrong, we don't go back to Godhead, we're going to have to suffer for the wrongdoing. The right things that we do not cancel the wrongdoing. It doesn't work like that. It does not work like that. The right things that we do don't cancel the wrong things. We're going to suffer for the wrong things that we do, albeit the fact that we're devotees. Part of the suffering is coming, not the full punishment. But we don't say, oh, we've done this. Otherwise, people will say, well, I've done this wrong thing. But chanting Hare Krishna is good. Therefore, I'll chant Hare Krishna and it will cancel it out. No, it doesn't work like that. In fact, it is the greatest sin to try to chant Hare Krishna to mitigate our sins. That's the 7th offense. Of the 10 offenses chanting the holy name. Don't do that. Chant Hare Krishna because we just want our sins forgiven. Srila Prabhupada says the mantra can purify us, but we shouldn't use it that way. So if we do something wrong, we should be very determined not to repeat the wrongdoing. And at that, there's one advice that my spiritual master, Bhakti Maharaj, gave. It takes humility to do that, but it's very, 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 very effective and helpful in our growth in Krishna consciousness. Approach someone who knows you. This is a detail. Approach someone who knows you, one-on-one, and tell them, Prabhu, I really want to see about what you know about things that I need to do in Krishna consciousness to improve my life in Krishna consciousness, my devotee life. Can you tell me things that I need to work on in order to be a better devotee? People with big egos are not going to want to do that, but it is very helpful when we do that. The question can be put in such a way that it's easier to answer it. You can say, what am I doing wrong? Please tell me. That's going to be more difficult to take. But you can ask the same question in a different way. What is it that I need to do to improve? That is a suggestion for doing the better thing, the right thing. What am I doing wrong is a list of the things you're doing wrong. But what can I do to improve? That is a list. You're going to get what needs to be done. It's the same bottom line suggestions. And then make a note of that. Now, Bhakti Maharaj, when he was telling us, he told us another thing also. Make sure that the false ego is put in check, because there will be the big, big, big possibility of people saying, no, this person doesn't understand me. I'm not like that. Why is he saying those kind of things about me? I'm not like that. Nah, that's his problem. He just doesn't see me for who I really am. That's why he's saying like that. It is important to do that exercise. The more we do that, the more we realize what we have to work on. And if we don't do that, then we will live a life kind of openly, overtly, or openly, sounding like a wonderful devotee. But behind the scenes, covertly, we got so many problems to work on. And we're not working on them. A real genuine devotee will be worried about his weakness. But here's some of the things to look at. If you go to someone, one of the advantages is you get to get a good sense of how other devotees see you. You know who you are, but other devotees see you in a certain way. And who you are or who I am and how other devotees see me are not necessarily the same. So if you ask that person, what can I do from what you see me as to become even better? as a devotee, and they tell you things that you could do. That is the impression that people are having about you. And if I ask, that's the impression people are having about me. And it's very helpful. Very, very, very helpful. Because we're going to live communally. Even if we're not now, we're going to live communally. In the spiritual world, you're forced to. It's just the way it is. It's not even forced. It's just like, it's wonderful that way. Everything is communal. Mm-hmm. So we have an opportunity if we control the senses, and this is what is in Nectar of Instruction, text 1, and also what Nārada is actually advocating. Mm-hmm. And Lord Brahmā, they all do that. We should be about that also. Mm-hmm. Engage in Krishna Katha. Glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead's name. Mm-hmm. So the urges of a tongue should be, when the tongue speaks, let it speak Krishna Katha. Let it speak what is necessary. Let it speak what is beneficial. No gossip. Mm-hmm. And finally, a couple more. We take prasad, but we should take prasad not only, this is the tongue still, taking prasad at scheduled times. Mm-hmm. It's always good for the body when we take prasad pretty much at the same time. Pretty much at the same time. Mm-hmm. And if we stick to taking only prasad at a certain time, the urges of the tongue and the belly can be controlled. Mm-hmm. If we use sex life to beget a child, that is the highest. And that is according to Krishna. He says, I am sex life according to religious principles. Mm. So that should be, we should be living like that. We should strive to get to that point if we're not already there. First, it's physically stopping sex life that doesn't involve pregnancy. And then mentally, getting out of that feeling. But all around us is more the passion stuff. Therefore, it is very important to relate to devotees who are fixed up. And prayer. Pray to get out of that lusty type, mentality. And over time, Krishna will help if we're really, 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 going after this whole thing of wanting to be less lusty and praying until we're practically not lusty at all. It's through prayer and associating with non-lusty people, which means non-devotees. If you don't associate with non-devotees, that's a big step towards that, dealing with that. Then we are very well balanced in our devotional life and happiness, real clean happiness, not this more passion type of happiness here. The people think they are satisfying their senses and they think they're happy. That won't be a part of our lives anymore. So yes, there's wonderful things waiting for us. We just have to go at it and encourage each other. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. So this is the time to unmute yourself, the devotees. If you have questions, if you have suggestions, if you have whatever's on your mind. Hare
Krishna, please accept my humble obeisance, O Goswami Prabhupada. Thank you for this class, and couple of points that you touched upon that I would like to ask if you could clarify. One point that you mentioned is disagreement. Disagreement between two people means I don't agree, and doesn't mean that I have to agree to be the best of friends, right? But we live in a culture or in a world where if I don't disagree with you, that means you're not my friend, and I'm not your friend when we are enemies, and I will do everything that I have to do in my power.
You mean if I don't agree with you?
Sorry, yes. Sorry. Yes. If I don't agree with you, then we are not friends, and we don't see eye to eye, so we are enemies, and I will do everything in my power to make whatever I have to do to carry out my plan, whether you agree or not. So that is the kind of world we live in, unfortunately. So how can we develop and really understand disagreement and dishonesty, or or untruthfulness, because like we see even in marriages, it's not everything that the wife says that what the husband agrees. It's not everything that the husband says the wife agrees, but we tolerate each other. So but that kind of consciousness is not between two people, whether it's being two friends or even two devotees. So how can we develop that understanding? Is I don't agree with you, but still you're my friend, but I'm not going to be untruthful.
It's interesting how I think we are in Questions by Citing the Lord's Version. It's chapter 9 of this Canto 2.
Yes, we are.
Chapter 10 of this Canto 2 says, Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. That is the title of the next chapter.
So I think I have to wait till the 10th chapter to get my answer.
In other words, the point we're making is, you'll be surprised that practically everything that you talked about, if you've been listening intently and regularly to Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll find the answer there. Something that relates to, there's a point in Bhagavatam, the point that is made in Bhagavatam that answers that question. The more you get to know about that, the more you can use the reference from Bhagavatam to make a point, and then you can't be disagreed with because Bhagavatam is absolute. One of the ways where a devotee can get away from disagreement so much. Of course, in American and, well, in common life, people say, oh, they agree to disagree. But the fact is, they disagree. They disagree. They're just postponing the disagreement and not settling it. When they say agree to disagree. The answer is there. All questions, Bhagavatam has a solution for it. That's why hearing Bhagavatam daily is so helpful. Because daily, hearing of Bhagavatam, you're going from one text to another in detail, starting from the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's Canto 1 and Canto 2. That's where we're at now. This is where you have your basics are learned. We say basics, but that's detail still. We're saying basics for us. That is the deeper aspects of Krishna consciousness, the foundation, that's the word they're looking for. Foundation. Canto 1 and Canto 2 gives foundation. Then you go to Canto 3, then of course, Maitreya Muni starts explaining to Vidura. We also have Lord Kapila explaining to Devahuti, his mother. Then things get a little bit more. Now you're learning more. Like that. But Cantos 1 and 2 are such foundational, deep philosophy. That also touches on our daily lives. So Canto 1 and Canto 2, once you finish that, you get to be able to agree or deal with a particular situation in a nice, humble way, but backing it up with what's, especially in these first two cantos. In that way, you won't get into too much trouble. Now, the worst of the worst situations that, it's difficult. Remember, we've talked about it today. The urge of the tongue. The urge of the tongue. So we have to try to control the urges of the tongue. So if there is a situation where two people are talking and it's going to wind up being ugly, hopefully they both know that they have to control their tongues. It may be something to discuss later on because then the mood is changed. Anger has become a part of it. So at that point, they shouldn't continue. You can, in fact, nicely excuse yourself. This is something we'll have to deal with at another time. Thank you, Prabhu. You put your hands out. All glory to the Prabhupada. So then you don't get into a situation that's bad. Or if you don't know how to deal with that because you feel your point is so strong, approach the senior devotee and talk about it. Approach your guru, talk about it, bring it up, and let the guru give you the take on it. Backed up with Shastra. Usually that's what they do. They'll back it up with Shastra and their own experience. And now, next time, you can have that matter settled, and you settle the matter by not quoting what you've heard from Guru like it came from you. That is wrong. That is not the way to do it. And in fact, it won't be helpful. I'll tell you why. If you quote that His Holiness so and so said this about this, then you're quoting a third party. So then the other person doesn't see that, oh, this person is just coming directly at me with his opinion, and his opinion or her opinion is just as good as mine, or maybe my opinion is even better. But that kind of thinking. Every time we quote an authority on what they have said, then there's likelihood that the other person will listen to. So quoting a third party that's an authority is actually better than taking what the authority has said and then just putting it out like it's yours, even though you've learned it from that authority. But give reference that so Maharaj has said that, or so Senior Devotee has said this is where I learned it from. It really helps in solving situations. If the person still doesn't agree, well, there's not much you can do at that point. But you made your point from a higher reference from a higher authority. Hare Krishna. Thank you for the questions. Very good. Any other questions? Okay, I don't hear anything now. So thank you all for coming. This wonderful Monday. Be safe. It's a little treacherous out there since in this area now we're in winter. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhibhya eva cha patitānaṁ pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Nupur Mataji. Hare Krishna. Jai.